Welcome to the Low Demand Parenting Podcast, where we drop the pressure, find the joy, and thrive, even when it feels like life is stuck on level 12 hard. I'm Amanda Diekman, author, autistic adult, and mom of 3. I'm not here as an expert, but a fellow traveler. Together, we're learning how to live more gently, authentically, and vibrantly in this wild parenting life.
This episode this week is talking all about advocacy in the established school system. And I want to say before the episode even begins that if your kid is not able to access school and was not successful at getting accommodations and understanding in your established school system, then this may not be the episode for you. In this episode, we talk about how to advocate and how to work within the system as it is, which I know applies to many of you, but many others it won't. Just want to say that before it begins, wanting to avoid any triggering of feeling like, that's how I wanted it to be for us and it didn't go that way. We didn't get the support that we should have had. I understand that feeling, and so I'm giving you a little heads up. For those of you who do have kids in the public school system or in your nationally run schools, this is a great episode for gathering information about how to advocate and how to organize a village-based approach. We're going to be using some language and terminology from the public schools in the United States. We talk about IEPs and 504s. Those are the way that disabled students access institutional supports in our context. So you can replace that for whatever is available in your country or your context. And without any other caveats, I'm so excited to bring you this conversation.
I am here with fellow North Carolinian just up the road from me. This is Keischa Pruden, and we are going to talk about schools and advocacy and dropping demands for our kids. And I am so honored that you are taking this time to be with us today. Thank you, Keischa, for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is one of my passions, and I'm so glad I was invited. I just really hope I can lend some expertise, offer some encouragement to parents and educators everywhere to just keep advocating for our kids and offer some commonplace, common sense tips and strategies.
Yeah, I can't wait. Let's start with you, though. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and your experience with school advocacy?
I'm Keischa Pruden, and I am a wife of May will be 30 years to my husband, Paul, and we have 2 amazing sons, Aaron, who is 29 and on the autism spectrum, and then we have a 20-year-old Bryant, and he has ADHD, and our advocacy efforts started early on, as you can imagine, in the school systems, but even before then, when our oldest son started experiencing difficulties with his language leaving him at age approximately 14 months. So our journey started then. And then, of course, when he turned 3 and he qualified for public school education services, that's when we entered into the public school process. And my personal journey started then. But I'm also a licensed therapist. In my practice, I also began to see families and clients on the spectrum, ADHD. So I was taking what I was learning in my personal life and applying it professionally. So I have been advocating for my children and my clients and families now for 25 years. So my passion is creating supportive villages for autism families.
I can't wait to hear more as we talk about what that looks like, because for so many families, it is an experience of loneliness and rejection is a lot of what they go through. The idea of a village just flips all that on its head. It's all about creating safety, which is where I wanted to start with this conversation. We know from all of the research that's come out over the last 15 years, what people have known in their souls for generations, which is that we can only learn when we feel safe enough to do so. That
Absolutely.
When we are too stressed, no learning is happening. And since schools are essentially, it's both a support system, like you're talking about, it's part of that village,
Right.
and it's a place of learning. And so safety is paramount. And I consider low demand to be essentially about dropping the things, letting go of the things that make kids feel unsafe so that they can be ready and open to learn. Can you talk about some of the challenges over your 25 years of advocacy that you have seen that are making it hard for kids to learn, that are making it hard for them to feel safe in the system as it exists?
Of course. My other passion is also whole wellness and promoting whole wellness for everyone, especially women, because we do it all. But it's, and also children, neurodiverse children. And so the answers I'm going to give you are based on a whole wellness perspective. Often when we look at children, we don't look at them wholly. We look basically academically. So if we're looking in the school environment, traditionally what we've seen is children going to the school and they are to fit into what's going on in the school. And if they don't fit into the schedule, if they don't fit into the expectations, then we get the parent teacher conferences, and then the famous, they will put on yellow or red or that type of thing, and they're deemed a behavior problem. Or now we have to get IEP or 504 or behavioral improvement plan. However, if you look at a child from a whole point of view, which a lot of schools aren't doing, if you look at them from a biopsychosocial perspective, then you can provide an environment in which they can thrive. So the challenges have been that school systems have not looked at children as a whole, as their whole selves, their whole beings. And because
Mm-hmm.
they don't, a lot of parents and educators have difficulties, especially the educators, in structuring lesson plans or structuring their rooms, and also just making sure that children feel safe in their environment. Another struggle that parents have is that they don't feel confident enough to advocate. They don't feel like they have the information that they need to advocate. And what I always try to share with my parents is that we know our kids better than the educators and the psychologists and the pediatricians. We know our kids better than anyone. So take what you know, integrate the information that you receive, and then you can advocate for your child more effectively in the public school system.
Mm.
So those are just a couple of challenges. I could go on forever, but those are the most
Yeah.
important challenges that both educators and parents face, because we have to look at it from a collaborative point of view. You can't, as a parent, just say, oh, it's all the educators' fault, and then the educators can't look at the parents and say, oh, it's all the parents' fault. We have to look at this as a collaboration. What can we do as two separate systems to work together to ensure that our
Mm.
children have their definition of a meaningful day?
What are some ways that you have seen it work well for educators to get on board to shift toward that whole child perspective? And what are some ways, since we're specifically talking about demands and lowering them in this setting, what are some concrete expectations that you've seen don't work for especially autistic and ADHD kids in the school system that are
Well,
helpful to let go of?
what does not work is expecting children on the spectrum to handle transitions, unexpected transitions, with ease. That's the biggest thing.
Hmm.
When I think back on my personal, or my village's personal journey, and there will be what we call, I don't like the word meltdown, I like to call it sensory overload. When there were
Mm-hmm.
episodes of sensory overload with my son, and we would go out to school and we would see what the cause was, because I'm a trained therapist, so I'm always looking for the why. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it was because there was an unplanned transition. So then I started to train the staff at school on the best ways to help us. So if there is a planned transition, then we can plan days ahead of time. But if there's all of a sudden transition, what quick plan can we put into place? And then we at home would talk to him about, there may be changes today, and what are we going to do if their plan changes? That's collaboration. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh,
That
yeah.
makes
That
sense.
reminds
So,
me when my son was in school, for him, a transition or an
mhm.
unplanned transition could be like the teacher put the question of the day on the other side of the board. It was the kind of thing that they're like, oh, it should be no big deal. He should be able to handle it. I'm like, he can't. That is for him
Right.
a big deal. And so I totally resonate with you.
Let me give you an example of what can work. I had to do a consult one time with a Head Start program, and they had a child that to them, they had a behavior problem, a child on the spectrum, and he had really just demolished the classroom. And so I went in, observed him in the classroom, and then talked to the teachers. And then we discovered, that the issue was around transition from centers time to reading time, and that they expected him just to go. So what we worked together to do, and what I suggested we do, I said, what does he like? What is his currency? Because every child, no matter what age or teenager up, they have a currency. It's something they love. They go, oh, he likes racing cars. I said, so let's do this. Let's create like a big race car and put a schedule on it. And then when it's time to transition, create a transition song that everybody in the classroom sings. And that way he knows it's time to transition to the second thing. And you're not just expecting him to move. So let's do that. Let's try that and see if that works. Collaboration. And it worked. And it worked. And no more tearing the room up, because he knew what was coming. He was prepared for the transition. And then he transitioned. And that is just like a common sense approach. And let's switch to schools. So if you look at schools and you look at them in terms of, again, whole wellness, biopsychosocial. So whether you're a regular education teacher or a special education teacher, they tell you who you're going to have. And if you're a regular education teacher and they tell you, okay, you have some children in your room that may need additional, then you look in your environment when you're getting your room ready. Will there be any sensory issues in this classroom? Lighting, any type of textures, the rug texture, the seats. You talk with the parents. Are there any sensory issues, and how can we address them in the classroom? Is there a quiet space that has lower lighting? Will he need headphones? Do I need a transition plan? Will I have buddies? Will I have a buddy system in my room for my children with additional needs? And that's something that you can develop over time as you observe your children as a whole and talk to their parents too, to see if that's okay. Are there children with empathy? Are there children with those types of people skills and strengths, with patience, that would love being a buddy? And so that's the social part. You have to look at all of it. Biologically, physically, are there any needs? Psychologically, are there any needs? Because a lot of times with our neurodiverse kids, there are co-occurring issues, not just the autism, not just the ADHD. We might have some depression. We might have some anxiety. Are there any triggers, mama and daddy, that we should look out for, mitigate, decrease? And then back in the day, we had a notebook that our child went back and, we put it in his backpack, and we send it back and forth every day. So we would know what happened in school, if there was anything we need to address, and then we would write things so that they would know. So that's the communication. Now, of course, when children realize what it is, that happened to us, they may destroy it, they may hide it if their day wasn't the best. Because when my son, when he realized what it was, he was like, and I looked and I was like, Aaron, where's your notebook? I don't know. So we had to start again. And so it's a constant collaboration. And to be honest, you feel like, as a parent, you may feel like a case manager, where you're managing all of these parts. And I talk about that in the mini course I have about building villages for families, is that you are in the middle with your child, and then you determine what the services are needed, and then you monitor the services to make sure everything's going. And that's what you're doing. And so it's constant. And so they're changing parts and changing people, and you're tweaking processes. So that's how that goes.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that question.
So many gems of wisdom there. And it gets into the last part you were just mentioning about how much the parents carry in this process. It's a really important role of advocate and manager. Do you want to speak to the load that it is on parents?
For me, and for when I say for me, but for us, for my husband and I from the very beginning, we always said this is about finding out what's going on with Aaron and then making sure our family, our village had a mission and a vision. Our mission and vision was always to make sure that Aaron had his definition of a meaningful day. And we did that through constant advocacy for him and creating that village. And so that's why I talk about village life, because I don't think I could have been so passionate and been able to work so hard without having a village of support.
Mm.
You need it. A whole wellness. The parents and caregivers need to be able to build the village for their child and also a village for yourself to make sure that you have the support to advocate, because studies show that special needs parents have the same reactions and brain waves of those that suffer from PTSD and like veterans coming from war, because you are hyper vigilant, you are hyper aware. It's like you're constantly in mama bear mode. And it's so funny, and this is the truth, because I was talking with one of the social workers from DSS agency that I work with, and she was talking about the issues she's had with her babies and advocating for them in the school system. And I was like, oh, I was like, call me anytime. I love to fight. And she just started laughing. I was like, oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I was like, you send me their IEPs and 504s. I'll review them. I'll help you craft some goals if you need to craft goals, or give you recommendations on what goals could better help. Because at the end of the day, we're all tasked, anybody that's involved with children, our task is to make sure that each day is not only meaningful, but that they receive the best public education that they can receive. And so sometimes it does feel like fighting. You leave an IEP meeting and you're just like drained, because it's emotional. It's emotional for the
Mm-hmm.
parents. A lot of times it's emotional for
Mm-hmm.
advocates like me. It's professional, but it's also, let's get in there and fight. Let's get in there and make sure they have everything that they need. So it's about knowledge. It's about having the knowledge and having the confidence to go forth with the knowledge that you have to advocate.
Let's talk about the village a little bit more, because that
Okay.
you can do it and I'll help you, because seeing you name off the things that you have advocated for over the years, just feeling your confidence and conviction can rub off on a parent that's just not sure.
Mm-hmm.
They've never been in this role before. Nobody advocated for them when they were little. They just put their head down and got through, or they got in trouble and they thought they were a bad kid. So tell me more about how you imagine the village, particularly supporting around schools and school advocacy.
So when I think about villages, I think about the village that I come from. I have a friend that calls it neurospicy. When I look back on my family now, and I was talking to one of my aunties, she was like, oh my gosh, Keisha, everybody's ADHD. And I'm late diagnosed ADHD, but like I told mom, I was like, well, we should have known. And she was like, Keisha, I'm thinking back, I should have known. She has I'm gonna tell you a quick story. My mom she was a helicopter mom, and I was her first. So she would come out to school and look through the little rectangle to watch me. And she said when she would do it, she said I was rarely ever sitting in my desk. She said I would be standing up, doing my work, but moving, like just constantly moving. And she said one day she decided she was going to open the door and tell me to stop. And so she opened the door, and the teacher was like, what are you doing here? And she was like, I'm going to tell her to stop. And she was like, nope, she's doing her work. Don't bother her. And that's like, when I look back on my life now, it was just one instance of like, why didn't we pick up on that? But my village surrounded me with support. Like, also, I'm left-handed and the only one in my immediate family. So it was me. And my parents did stuff like they bought a left-handed refrigerator one time, because they were like, why are you opening the refrigerator like that? They bought me a left-handed refrigerator. They would buy me left-handed scissors, left-handed notebooks. So I came from that type of support. So I knew as I was creating an environment that I had to have particular people in place to address different needs that I couldn't address. What do they need biologically? What do they need psychologically? What do they need socially? So if you're looking in the school system, we're going to look there. Does your child have any supports in place, an IEP or 504? They don't. Do you feel like they need one? You do. Why do you feel like they need one? We talk about it, and then we talk about, do you know what the process is? You don't? Okay, here's the process. So then they have the process. Okay. The teachers at school, and this is me as an advocate, are you guys open to collaborating? Open to more information on whatever the issue is, autism or ADHD, tips, strategies. And if you approach it that way as a collaboration, and what can I do to help your school day and this child's school day go smoother, then they gobble it up. They say, yes, what can we do? Because they might take a class here and a class there in their curriculum for teaching, but they don't know, if that makes sense. So they need, and they want strategies and skills. So then you offer that in the school system. And then you also make sure that if there are any additional needs, that they're addressed throughout the school year with IEP and 504 meetings. Because a lot of parents, again, it's about knowledge. They're not aware that you can call a meeting anytime you feel like there's a need. You assist them with their concern statements for the meetings. And so that's what it looks like in the school system. And then the parent checks in with the teacher checks in with the parent via the notebook or text now, because back in the day, 20 some years ago, it was a notebook. Now it's emails, texts, different dashboards, different apps on your phone to talk about concerns. If there's a school counselor, if there's a mental health issue, along with the ADHD and the autism, making sure that they're linked to the counselor at the school. And so just making sure everybody's on the same page. And what's important is that everybody's doing the same thing. We call it in the behavioral health world continuity of care. And so that's just a fancy term for making sure that everybody's doing the same thing everywhere. There is no way a child is going to be successful in all three, homeschool and community, if everybody's doing something different. So in my village, what did that look like? Like we were saying before, it's a lot of work. That's why you need a village, because we can't, as parents, we can't do it all. We cannot, and we should not, because we have the public school system in place, and they are legally supposed to provide certain things. And it's okay to hold them accountable. It's okay to say, these are some things that you are supposed to be doing, and I need you to do it. If you need other help, if you need a therapist outside of school to address issues, that's fine. If they need to take medication for their depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive, like these things, because autism and ADHD are wiring issues, and a lot of people don't get that. It's wiring, it's neurological, it's wiring. That's more than likely you're going to have the autism or the ADHD, and you're going to have something else. And it's okay if they have to take medication for those things. It's just, if you're going to the doctor for diabetes or high blood pressure, like, it's the same thing. So if they have to do that, make sure they link to that. If they need an occupational therapist, make sure that they're linked to that. And the school is part of that. The school provides that while they're school age. So make sure that's in place. A speech therapist, the school is responsible for that. So it's knowledge. It's telling your parent, letting them know what the child is supposed to have, what your baby's supposed to have in the school system. And then having that IEP or 504 meeting, saying, this is what my child needs, how often they need it, and then keeping track of it to make sure it happens.
I love it. Thank you for pouring so much wisdom out. I can feel both your passion and your experience coming through in this conversation. Yes, you have lived this life for decades, and that just brings so much richness to your witness now. Thank you very much for all that you shared with us today.
Thank you.
If this podcast is speaking to your soul, you can subscribe through wherever you get your own podcasts. Even better, if you feel the nudge, head on over to Apple Podcasts in particular and leave us a review. It's such a helpful way for new people to also get to experience what this podcast wants to bring into their lives. I'm Amanda. Remember, it takes great strength to let things go. I'll see you next week.